Africa, a land of vast plains and towering mountains. From the bustling markets of Marrakesh to the serene beaches of Zanzibar, Africa is a continent of vibrant cultures and breathtaking beauty. The rhythms of ancient drums echo through the ages, telling tales of kings and queens, warriors and poets. Gold and diamonds shimmer beneath the earth, while above ground coffee, cocoa and spices scent the air. Laughter and music fill the air, a testament to the resilience and joy of the African people. The winds of change began to blow across Africa in the late 19th century. European powers, hungry for resources and driven by imperial ambitions, turned their gaze towards the continent. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, a gathering of European powers, carved up Africa like a cake, dividing the continent into colonies with little regard for the existing ethnic and cultural boundaries. European powers, armed with advanced weaponry and fueled by a sense of racial superiority, imposed their will on the African people. The wealth of the continent, its gold, diamonds, rubber and other resources were siphoned off to fuel European industries, leaving many African communities impoverished and exploited. This period, known as the Scramble for Africa, marked the beginning of a long and arduous struggle for the continent's people. In the heart of Europe, a gathering of men in tailored suits huddled over maps, their fingers tracing lines across the continent of Africa. This was the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, a pivotal moment that would seal the fate of millions. Gathered were representatives from the major European powers, Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Portugal and others. With little regard for the people who called this land home, they carved up the continent, drawing arbitrary borders that cut across ethnic groups, separated kingdoms, and sowed the seeds of future conflicts. The voices of the African people, their leaders, their elders, were absent from this fateful meeting. The years following the Berlin Conference witnessed a frenzied scramble for African territories. European powers, driven by an insatiable thirst for resources and prestige, raced to plant their flags across the continent. The competition was fierce, with nations often resorting to military force to assert their dominance. European powers exploited Africa's vast natural resources, extracting raw materials to fuel their industrial growth. Mines were dug, plantations established, and railroads built, all with the aim of funneling wealth out of Africa and into European coffers. African communities, once self-sufficient and thriving, were forced into labor on European-owned farms and mines. Life under colonial rule was a harsh reality for the vast majority of Africans. The colonizers, believing in their own inherent superiority, implemented policies designed to subjugate and control the native populations. Africans were treated as second-class citizens in their own land, subject to discriminatory laws and regulations that governed nearly every aspect of their lives. The imposition of colonial rule did not extinguish the flame of freedom in Africa. From the outset, Africans resisted their oppressors, challenging the notion of European supremacy and fighting to preserve their ways of life. These uprisings, fueled by a potent mix of anger, desperation, and a deep-seated desire for freedom, often took the form of guerrilla warfare, with Africans using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. As colonial rule tightened its grip on Africa, a new generation of leaders emerged, men and women who refused to accept the shackles of foreign domination. Samori Touré, founder of the Wassoulou Empire in West Africa, was a formidable military strategist and a staunch opponent of French colonialism. For over a decade, he led his forces in a fierce guerrilla war against the French, employing innovative tactics and forging alliances with neighboring kingdoms to resist their advance. In Ethiopia, Emperor Menelik II stood as a beacon of hope, not only for his own people, but for all of Africa. Refusing to bow to European pressure, Menelik II modernized his army and forged alliances with other African leaders, preparing for the inevitable clash with Italy. Yaa Asantewaa, Queen Mother of the Ashanti Empire in present-day Ghana, embodied the spirit of resistance against British colonialism. On a fateful day in March 1896, near the town of Adwuye in the Ethiopian highlands, the fate of Africa hung in the balance. Emperor Menelik II, at the head of a well-equipped and highly motivated Ethiopian army, faced off against an invading Italian force seeking to subjugate Ethiopia and expand its colonial empire. The Battle of ADWA, as it came to be known, would become a defining moment in African history, a resounding victory against European imperialism and a beacon of hope for colonized people around the world. Menelik II, a shrewd tactician, had spent years modernizing his army, acquiring modern rifles and artillery and training his soldiers in modern warfare. The battle raged for hours, a fierce and bloody encounter that tested the mettle of both sides. As the dust settled, the battlefield was littered with Italian dead and wounded, a testament to the ferocity of the Ethiopian defense. The Second World War, a global conflict of unprecedented scale and devastation, left an indelible mark on the world, reshaping the geopolitical landscape and igniting a fervent desire for change. The war had weakened the European powers, both physically and morally, exposing the hollowness of their claims of superiority and undermining their ability to maintain their vast colonial empires. Thousands of Africans had fought bravely alongside their European counterparts, risking their lives for the very freedoms denied to them in their own homelands. They had witnessed firsthand the fragility of European power and had returned home with a renewed determination to fight for their own liberation. Across Africa, from the bustling cities to the rural villages, a new spirit of nationalism began to take hold. People who had once been subjects of European empires began to see themselves as citizens of future nations, united by a common history, culture, and a burning desire for self-determination. Political parties and movements, often led by charismatic figures who had been educated in European universities but had returned home with a fervent belief in African self-rule, sprang up across the continent. These leaders tapped into the collective anger and frustration of their people, channeling it into organized resistance against colonial rule. Students, often at the forefront of social change, played a pivotal role in the nationalist movements. Universities became hotbeds of political activism, nurturing a new generation of leaders who would go on to shape the destiny of their nations. Section 3. Leaders of Liberation Forging New Nations. As the struggle for independence intensified, a constellation of visionary leaders emerged, men and women who would come to define the African liberation movement and shape the destiny of the newly independent nations. Kwame Nkrumah, a charismatic and eloquent leader who had studied in the United States and Britain, emerged as a leading figure in the Gold Coast's independence movement. Section 1. The Price of Freedom: Violent Uprisings. The road to independence, paved with the aspirations of millions, was often stained with the blood of patriots. For many African nations, the transition from colonial rule to self-determination was not a peaceful transfer of power, but a violent struggle against entrenched forces determined to maintain their grip on power. These uprisings, fueled by years of oppression, exploitation, and the denial of basic human rights, were a testament to the indomitable spirit of the African people and their unwavering commitment to freedom, even at the cost of their lives. European powers, having carved up the continent with little regard for existing ethnic or cultural boundaries, had sown the seeds of future conflicts. The return of African soldiers from World War II, having fought for freedom abroad only to find it denied at home, further fueled the flames of discontent. Section 2. The Mau Mau Uprising, a fight for land and dignity. In the highlands of Kenya, a land of breathtaking beauty scarred by the injustices of colonial rule, the Mau Mau Uprising erupted in 1952, a testament to the desperation and courage of a people pushed to the brink. The Mau Mau, a clandestine movement rooted in Kikuyu traditions and grievances, emerged as a force of resistance against British colonial rule and the land alienation that had impoverished and displaced countless Kikuyu families. Section 3. The Algerian War, a bloody struggle for self-determination. The Algerian War, which erupted in 1954, was a protracted and bloody conflict that pitted the Algerian National Liberation Front, or FLN, against the French colonial administration and its supporters. The FLN, a nationalist movement, committed to ending French colonial rule and establishing an independent Algeria, launched a guerrilla war against French forces, targeting military installations, government buildings, and symbols of French authority. Section 1. The Weight of Legacy, Colonialism's Scars. The dawn of independence brought with it a surge of hope, a promise of a brighter future for Africa. Yet, beneath the surface of jubilation lay a sobering reality. The legacy of colonialism cast a long shadow, shaping the political, economic, and social landscapes of the newly independent nations. The seeds of division sown during colonial rule bore bitter fruit in the form of civil wars, coups, and political instability, hindering development and shattering the dreams of unity and progress. Section 2. The struggle for unity, forging national identity. In the aftermath of independence, African leaders faced the daunting task of forging national unity from the fragments of their colonial past. The arbitrary borders inherited from European powers often encompassed diverse ethnic groups, languages, and religions, creating a complex tapestry of identities and aspirations. The challenge was to weave these disparate threads into a cohesive national fabric, promoting unity and solidarity while respecting diversity. Many African leaders sought to create a sense of shared national identity through various means, promoting national languages, fostering cultural exchange programs, and investing in education systems that emphasized national history and values. The creation of national symbols such as flags, anthems, and monuments aimed to evoke a sense of pride and belonging among citizens, transcending ethnic or regional affiliations. Section 3. The Neo-Colonial Shadow Economic Dependency. The euphoria of political independence was tempered by the sobering reality of economic dependence. While colonialism had officially ended, its economic legacies persisted, trapping many African nations in a web of neo-colonial relationships that hindered their ability to achieve true economic self-reliance and prosperity. The global economic order, still largely shaped by the former colonial powers, continued to favor the interests of developed countries, often at the expense of developing nations. Many African nations found themselves locked into a cycle of dependency, exporting raw materials at low prices to former colonial powers, only to import finished goods at inflated prices. This unequal exchange of goods and services resulted in a net outflow of wealth from Africa, perpetuating a system that benefited developed countries while keeping African economies underdeveloped and vulnerable to global market fluctuations. The enduring spirit of Africa. Africa's colonial past is filled with tales of exploitation and struggle, yet it's a testament to the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. The flame of freedom never truly flickered out. From early uprisings to 20th century mass movements, Africans showed unyielding determination. Independence leaders drew strength from their cultures and traditions. They invoked the spirits of their ancestors, warriors, and queens. Africa has a history, a legacy, and a future that belongs to its people. Section 2, a continent on the rise looking towards the future. As the sun rises over the savannas and deserts, it illuminates a continent brimming with potential. The legacy of colonialism continues to cast a shadow, yet there is a palpable sense of hope and optimism. A new generation is emerging, embracing technology and fostering innovation. They are building bridges across borders, creating a more interconnected continent. From the bustling tech hubs of Lagos and Nairobi to the vibrant art scenes of Dakar and Johannesburg, Africa is buzzing with creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. The African Union promotes peace, cooperation and development. Regional economic blocs are breaking down barriers to trade and investment. Challenges remain, of course. Poverty, inequality and conflict persist. Yet solutions must come from within, driven by African ingenuity. The future of Africa is bright because its people have never given up hope. As Africa continues its journey of transformation, it carries the hopes and aspirations of 1 billion people.